So this is the home screen. It's operational centric, meaning it tracks production and where all your value lies in terms of how many parts per hour you're producing, per shift and previous shift, how efficient was the machine in general, and then also, for instance, how much cycle time is remaining, so that when you start the process, you can go walk away and be efficient in other areas and see that bar as it counts down to 0, and then come back out and load a new part if needed. On the left-hand side, this is where all your recipe information is, and that tells you what set points the machine is running, and also while it's running, it shows you the actuals that's happening real time. Up on the top is the navigation bar where you can easily get to the other modular pieces of equipment that is connected to the system. And so it's just a quick overview of how is your production going throughout the day.
What pieces would be showing up there? What other... So you're talking dust collector and all that?
Right.
Okay.
The modular pieces would be like the blast machine, the dust collector, could be the reclaim. It could be a media ad hopper,
okay.
other type items that are kind of standalone units that are disconnected mechanically from the main cabinet. Gotcha. So for instance, I can navigate straight to the blast cabinet, and this then zooms into a more realistic, detailed view of that piece of equipment, that modular piece of equipment. It is grayscale on purpose, meaning that color should mean something to the operator, should get your attention. There's not lots of different flashy colors on the screen. So as you can see, the dot up here is clear because the button's not being pressed. When you press it, it has coloration to it to tell you something's going on. So there's a back button on the navigation to get back where you previously were. We can go to the blast pot and see the data and what the current valve state is. Gray is off, green would be actuated and working. Same way on the dust collector, we can easily navigate to that, and that shows you the data and the motor status behind that. There is also a navigation that comes up from the bottom, and you can see there's many different options to choose from. All of the feature set of what we provide out of the box as standard is within that navigation bar, and it can expand to upper levels for more sub-detail. For instance, when I click on equipment, you get another level, and then it gives you all the equipment that you can jump to. On the rest of the top here of the title bar, you can see where you can log in and out. There is equipment level security so that certain features are only available to the operator to change, but then you can also log in as maintenance and get more capability to change functions or change set points. There's also administrator password, which allows you to adjust all kinds of manufacturer settings and parameters of the machine. Right now we're logged in as the manufacturer.
The thing that came up from the bottom, is that embedded documentation?
No. It is navigation.
Okay, sorry. I missed that.
The rest of what's on top here, this information button pulls up the state machine of the entire piece of equipment, and it tells you what state it's in. For instance, right now it's stopped. Could be reboarding, aborting, canceling, resetting, starting, executing. Those are all states of the machine, what it's doing. And then down here you'll see later, that's what step it's in. What step is it executing while it's in the executing state. There's an alarm reset button, this kind of 2-arrow wraparound button. That'll turn red if there's a problem. To reset the alarm, you'll press that button. And then this alarm bell will also turn red, telling the operator you have an active alarm. When you click on that, you're going to go to an alarm summary page that's going to show you all of the alarms that are currently active. In a minute we'll see that. We can click on one, and we can see some detail even behind that alarm. when it shows up, when it happened, what are the related items that are going on when that alarm occurred. So in one of the detail screens, beyond the overall graphics, you can click on a device and it will bring up all of the features about that valve or motor or sensor. It tells the statuses on the home tab. If you click on the maintenance wrench, you can put it and force it into a mode where I force it on or force it off if I'm doing some maintenance activities. I can even press the test button just for a momentary test. In the settings tab, this allows the manufacturer to set what the normal state of that device should be, whether it's always closed if the power's off or always open if the power's off, or like on a motor, what is the gear reduction ratio from the speed of the motor to the actual thing moving. So a lot of manufacturer settings can be set up there. And then any error codes or fault codes you might have can be a deep dive right into this pop-up. Let's see if I can find a motor. So that was an example of a valve pop-up. This would be a motor that's on a VFD. So there's a lot of great Industry 4.0 smart data inside of this item here. This is in relation to the dust collector fan. It talks about this, what is the current speed of the motor, what is the direction you're trying to turn the motor, what is the status, is it accelerating, decelerating, zero speed, is it at full speed? If I click on the next tab, you can jog the motor manually based on what speed and acceleration and deceleration you want as a maintenance function. You can also set up like the conversion constant, which is the gear ratio, if you have a gearbox between the motor and whatever you're driving. You can set up the units. That's a manufacturing setting. Warnings. So any time the smart device gives a warning up to the HMI, you'll be able to see those statuses here. There's 2 pages of them. There's a help one that talks about, again, other statuses or setups that you have wrong. Let's say I went in as the manufacturer and set a setting out of bounds that doesn't make any sense. This would warn you about that. For instance, the acceleration rate less than 0 doesn't make sense to accelerate at a rate less than 0. There's also a deeper dive pop-up that can come up, and this is directly related to the smart device, not necessarily just the dust collector motor. This is all the statuses coming out of the electronics in there. So we can deeply see what frequency it's being commanded to run and what the current is, what the amperage is to that motor. We can see what it is. We can click on a trend and we can trend the motor amperage versus the speed we're running at the current time. There's a maintenance tab there. Again, you can change some trend limits to get a deeper understanding of what's causing your motor issues. And then here is a list of the latest fault codes, of a history of the fault codes. So if you want to go back and take a look, and if you click on that, you can actually get helpful information about what that fault code is, why it happened, and what you should do as a corrective action. These pop-ups are all generated from the manufacturer, Rockwell Automation. It's not something Clemco designed, so they're off the shelf and very familiar, not only to Rockwell Automation and to Clemco, but to any service company out there that does Allen Bradley programming. They're going to be familiar with this stuff. Rockwell also provides embedded PDF documentation for these pop-ups that they've created. So let's go into the recipe system. That's the second tab there on navigation. This shows an overview of all the parts available that have been created so far by the user or by Clemco. These are actually stored on an SD card inside the PLC, which can be easily removed, taken to a laptop, plugged in. You can open them up on Excel, and you can change them on the fly. The system does not have to be shut down for that. It can continue running. The operator can continue using it, and you can, and then you can back it up to a server drive. You can make modifications. You can create new ones. You plug it back in. When you plug that back in, you'll hit a refresh button. It will go out there and scan that SD card for anything new it has and pull it up in the list.
Are you limited in the number that you can have in there other than the SD card size?
There is an eventual limit, but it could be greater than 500.
Okay.
There's programming limitations as to how many we pre-set up for the programming, but the SD card can hold many Excel files.
Yeah.
We just have to be told up front, if the customer's planning to use 250 recipes, we need a program for that. It may require a larger memory PLC to do all that logic, but the SD card can hold as many as we want, and as long as we're planful about when the company wants to buy a new machine from us, and they tell us we're going to do 250 recipes, we'll buy the right size hardware components to make sure that's available. But the system functionality is already there. It is able to do greater than 500.
Okay.
So that's more than any company would probably ever need.
Yeah.
So with this overview, one thing you can click on is information about the one we're clicked on, and this shows who created it, what the revision is, what date it was created, and any notes about it. So if you're doing rev tracking and you wanted to up-rev your recipe to be a better version, this will tell you, am I on the latest version? That, hey, my sheet says I'm running this part with version C of the recipe. Let me make sure version C is correct before I download it, or before I select it. This tells you the status, the files are listed, and if there's any errors communicating with the SD card. We have 5 different features here. We can change directory in the SD card. We can edit the current recipe that we're selected on. We can load the recipe to be run on the machine. We can delete a recipe, and we can refresh the SD card. So if I click the first one and I want to, most of the time you'll be either loading, so I can hit load, and now it says this is the now active recipe. Recipe now active. Okay. So that sent it to the machine to be run, and if I come back later while the machine's running and I want to edit that recipe, it's not going to change what's happening to the machine while it's running. The machine will still be running on the previous load button. If I come in here and change this setting to 55 Hertz and hit update and hit save, now that has saved to the SD card into the Excel file. But the machine is still operating on the old parameter. The way to get the new settings to take effect is you want to set the machine back to a known stopped state before you go changing and adjusting things that could destroy something. So you'll come back to the equipment screens, and you'll have to hit the stop button and allow the machine to completely cycle stop before you allow it to start your new recipe that you just changed. So again, if we go into edit recipe, there's going to be a list of recipes that are of ingredients or settings. They call them recipe ingredients, but they're settings. The machine can be changed per part, and you can change those for whatever you like. When you edit a certain number, it's going to be limited between 2 reasonable values.
Hang on.
I accidentally kicked this. We might have to go back 30 seconds.
Can't have any. Okay, it won't be in the same spot now, but it's pretty close. So, yeah, where were we when you hit that? Editing, or were we at editing?
Yep. Maybe we were right back at after you reset the machine.
Okay. Yeah.
You would. Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'm selected on the first recipe, and if I want to start editing that recipe, I can click in here and change any of these values. To change a value, you click the Edit Recipe button, and it limits you between 2 reasonable values that the machine should run at. It doesn't let you put a very strange value in. You'll change it here on the keypad, min 40, max 100, and you'll hit Update, and it will change the recipe. It will, when you hit save, it will save it to the SD card.
Are the minimum and maximum set by you?
Or by the manufacturer, by us. Sorry, we are the manufacturer.
Yeah.
These buttons over here, so I can go back to the recipe list. I can edit again. I can load the selected recipe from this screen if I want instead of the other one. If I hit Save As, it's going to let me create a whole new recipe based on the current recipe I'm on. So I don't have to remember what all the default values were that came from this recipe and switch back and forth.
You just do it as E2.
Yep. So let's go ahead and create a -2. Hit OK. Save as. Now let's go back to the recipe list. And now you see version 2 exists. Perfect. And then there's a revert changes button. If you're in there and you're manipulating things and decide you want to go backwards, you don't want to save it to the SD card that way, you can revert back. So that's about all of the recipe system. Again, you can still click on it and see what the details in the description are. Any of this verbiage in here would have to be changed from the Excel file. All this text about what revision it is and who made the changes.
So you did how to create, or well, you kind of did how to create. Or is there you need more information, or did you?
I just did how to create.
You did,
which is to say that I didn't show the Excel file. If you want to do that at some point from a laptop, we'd have to take the SD card out and do that.
We can worry about that later. But then we did how to modify, how to store, retrieve, and engage. We did the operational data screen. That's that first one showing cycle times and all that.
There's more screens I can show.
Okay, yeah, you go ahead. I'm just making sure. I'm
You
just
just
checking.
checking me off.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll go back into the navigation bar. We mentioned that you can get to equipment, the different subsections of equipment, subcomponents. You can also get to alarms. This will take you to the same spot as the alarm bell, but there's also an alarm manager in here. So this is every alarm that's been programmed into the system by Clemco. And so if you ever wonder, hey, does that sensor, that level switch, have an alarm associated with it, or is it just there and not doing anything? This will tell you that an alarm was programmed by us. You can also do features where you can click on it and pause the alarm or shelve it for an X amount of time. You can stop the alarm and disable it if it's a nuisance and you know you're going to get a new sensor here in a minute. So there's different things you can do to these alarms to bypass them for X amount of time and get your problem fixed while you're not shutting production down. Under trends, there's the blast machine pressure. So the trend is nice and large. It's bringing up both of what the current value is and what the set point's supposed to be. So it's relational. Hey, this is my set point and my actual is way low or way high. But you got to have that relational value to understand whether it's good or bad. This is historical. So when an a USB is plugged into the back of the HMI, it will show you history. It will already brought up something, not trending live like this. I just didn't have an USB plugged in there. And you can pause the trend, do other things. We have trends for for dust collector features like filter life. What percent filter life are you at right now? It's 100% trending. See over time how that trend might degrade and your filter may be degrading in life. Cycle reports. So once a machine unloads the part, it will generate a new report about which operator, what machine it was, what recipe you chose, what recipe you verified. When we hit the start button, it will tell you to verify the recipe. What was the batch number you put in? So if you're creating a batch of parts and for some reason the operation was wrong on that batch of parts, you have traceability to go back and put those parts on QC hold for that entire batch. It also has a sequential number, so you could trace down specifically what the machine thought was the serial number the virtual serial number of that specific item. We got date and time. We can go back in time to see what report it was. This will, depending on how fast you cycle the machine, how fast it's moving, and how many reports it's creating. Out of the box, this will hold maybe 300 to 400 reports, which, depending on how fast you cycle and how many shifts, could be a month or two of data. We also have an email report feature, which will allow you, if you want this data at your desk, you can email it to some people real quick based on the button, or you can have the machine auto-email you the report every cycle as it completes. We have a cellular modem in here, so even if your IT group is unwilling to connect your machine to the network of the company, it can still be sent out with a prepaid cellular card, and that can cost roughly $20 to $30 a month for that activation. Another report we have is a machine report. This is the last month's report for all of your maintenance activities you may be interested in. For instance, what's my top 5 alarms last month and how many times did it happen? That would be great for root causing or Pareto analysis, so that you can figure out, how do I reduce my downtime? Well, what's my top alarm that I need to look at? We have, your motor running statistics, which is the frequency the motor's been running at, how many amps it's drawing. As your motor draws more amps, it's starting to get worn out. Maybe you want to proactively replace that motor. Show motor run times, how many hours of life has that motor run over time, and should you replace it based on hours. Dust collector statistics, so month over month you'll see, let's say your filter is degrading over time, so filter life left 100%, last month maybe it's 40%, you want to think about changing that filter. What was my pulsing time, what was my differential pressure across that as I was running. Your blast valve statistics, how many times has that valve actuated? Let's say the grit valve. Every time that actuates, it's going to rub grit on itself and start to wear. How many hours was that valve open? You're flowing grit through it. That would present wear across that valve, and that may tell you, hey, after 1,000 hours, I want to change my grit valve before it fails on me. And then you got blast system statistics, total machine run time, total part count, and then this one's interesting, alarm reset attempt counts. So if an operator is pecking at the reset button, he's not understanding what the machine's trying to tell him. So this could be an indicator that we didn't put a good alarm up there. We didn't name the alarm well, or maybe there's no alarm. If the operator's pecking at that reset button, he's not understanding why the machine won't reset, which is not intuitive. Again, you can email this report. You can have it auto-emailed out to you. It can send text messages as well. So I have a machine set up where it can send a direct message to you if a certain alarm happens. It can send any of these values, anything you want out of the machine that you want it to text you at certain events or times, it can do. I currently have a machine that is texting me right now, telling me a fault code. And so I'm knowledgeable when it happens real time. A settings screen, this is Rockwell Automation settings. You can set time and date, the IP address, data. You can extract data logs. You can set remote access. And the email button here, this is where you'll set up all your email server information. And then on this recipient list, this is where you'll plug in who is this information going to, and what telephone numbers might it be texting. Embedded documentation, so we have electrical drawings for this system embedded right here. So you can troubleshoot right from your HMI if you desire. Let's go to a screen we can zoom in on here. Okay, so this would be an electrical print, and you can zoom in on it, move it around, and see how your machine's wired. We have embedded manuals, both Clemco manuals and Rockwell Automation manuals. So for those faceplate pop-ups, like on a VFD, you'll see Rockwell Automation's manual is right in here for you to review what those pop-ups do and what all the features are that are on them. It's got a lot of great information. Our operating manual for Clemco is in here, so you can review how this HMI is set up and how the machine operates, what these displays mean. Dust collector manual is in there as well. So, and we'll go ahead and run a cycle, and we'll see the actual objects changing colors to tell us what the state of it is. So to run a cycle, you'll go to any of the equipment screens, and you'll see an operation bar on the left-hand side. These are all the things you can do to affect the auto operation of the machine. When you press this reset button, that actually kicks off the initialization of the machine. So if it's out of position, it will reset its position back to a good position so you're ready to start producing parts. So I'm going to hit reset. It's going to make sure the machine is in the correct position and make the start button available. When the start button is available, that means you're ready to start with whatever part you're going to produce. Hit start. It's going to start the dust collector in the background, but it's going to say you need to enter in this information before you're allowed to run a part, which means double check that you're going to have to type in the recipe name again. That's a verification that what you chose is what you mean to run. We can do that with a barcode reader as well. So if you were to take a barcode reader and scan the part, it would then check the part versus the recipe you chose, or auto-select. You could auto-select the recipe as well based on the barcode. It will log the current operator. Whoever's logged in up here is going to show up here. It's grayed out. You can't change that. And then if you want to put in your company's custom batch number, alphanumeric, you can plug that in there for traceability. When I hit start, the machine is now operating. It's auto-operating. It's ready for a part to be loaded. When a part sensor sees that a part's available, I'm going to simulate that with the blue button here. Normally there'd be a sensor over there. Anything that's green on the screen means it's being actuated. So you'll see a valve green up here. The vertical door is being held up, so it's green and actuated. The robot is engaged and ready to receive what you're about to send it. You can see on the blast pot screen, none of the valves are on. We're at 60 psi of pressure from the recipe. So we'll go ahead and load a part. Go ahead and show the door coming down. Your valve, your two valves, your down valve will turn on. Your up valve will turn off. Your door will show it's closed. We'll go to the blast pot screen here. Here's an example of an alarm of a switch that didn't quite make it in time. You can see some of the details behind that alarm. What exactly happened? When did it happen? How often does it happen? Blast pot screen, you can see all of the valves are on, so the pot is pressurized, it's sending air, and it's sending media, and it's turned to blast. Dust collector screen, you can see the VFD is running. You can see it's running at 50 hertz. If they click on it, you can see the command in an actual frequency. We want to view the details of the VFD itself. You can see it's running 50 hertz, and it's at 75% of the full current allowed. If you click on the eye here, you can see what it's doing what step it's in, what motion it's making. So that's what it's doing currently. And that'll change as the operation changes. You can see the alarm is lit up red. We have an alarm. We go to the alarm summary. We can see what it is. We can hit reset. When the machine's done processing for the day, you'll hit stop, and the machine will reset itself, put it back into the known state, and shut itself off. We'll wait for this to finish, and then I'll hit stop. You're doing great, and that's about all I got.
Hey, it's great stuff because it's documented that we can go back and if somebody needs to do something, then and we can decide later how produced we want it to be and which one to work over here. So yeah, this is great.
You can also see from the main screen, these three buttons are green. They have a green dot. They'll turn red if there's an alarm on that piece of equipment, which will give you the indication to go ahead and click on that tab.
Okay.
Take you over there and see what's an alarm. Now we'll hit stop. That shuts the machine off.
Awesome.
Wow.
I'm going to stop here. Okay.